Deputy Vice Chancellor, Vicerektor Anders Gustafsson, Stockholm University.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, you are all most welcome to Ala Magna and Stockholm University. It's a great honor, really, for Stockholm University to host this very special and probably unique event. As you have probably guessed coming here, innovation and entrepreneurship are very closely linked to sort of the basic cornerstones of what universities do. I think of education, knowledge, and research, of course. For higher education, it's very important to have this kind of exchange with what we often call the surrounding society, which is where the most interesting things often happen. I'm sure that this special evening will be very exciting, with the opportunity of listening to and discussing with Niklas Zennström and Andreas Ehn, two persons who don't really need any further introduction. Matthias Ljungman, who is somewhere around here, I think, will now introduce the panel who will start this evening's discussion with, so to speak, introducing with their expertise the topics of this event. And then we'll have the opportunity of welcoming Niklas Zennström and Andreas Ehn. Once again, very, very welcome. I'm sure that this evening will be very interesting.
Hej och välkomna. Jaha, ska vi titta här kanske? Jag sitter här. We're going to take this panel in English because I understand there's some international students here today. So, like I said, hello and welcome. My name is Matthias Ljungman. I'm a partner at Atomico, which is a venture capital firm based in London, with offices in Beijing and Sao Paulo. First of all, I'd like to thank the audience. Thank you very much for coming. We were very impressed with the registrations. I think we even had to close registrations last week. I think the weather has probably meant that maybe not everybody has been able to come yet, but it was fantastic because we actually haven't done any real marketing for this, so we're delighted to see you all here today. I'd also like to thank Stockholm University for hosting us. I'd also like to thank Exitera, the Entrepreneurship Society, and in particular Sebastian Fuchs, because of all his work and hard work to make this possible. And then the topic of the panel today is entrepreneurship, building great teams. And I think we're very, very fortunate here to have a great group of panelists who I will ask a few questions, and then we're gonna leave it up to the audience. So we're gonna give you about 10 minutes to ask a few questions. So please, this is your opportunity to ask some of the most dynamic people in our industry, how they're looking on recruitment and team building. So at the end of this, what I hope is that all of you can get a great insight what it's like to work for one of these companies and also be part of some really exciting companies, and also understand, bring the context of, how it's different and to maybe working for a bigger company, and what is the career opportunity in this environment. The panel, the thought of building this panel sort of came from some stats that I saw a few months back, where youth unemployment rate is just getting higher and higher. And I think actually I spoke with a lot of the panelists here too who shared that concern, where countries like Spain has 40% youth unemployment, you have 20% in the UK, And in Sweden, it's around 18, 19%, I understand. And so this is a real problem. At the same time, we're having these companies that are growing at a super fast speed. They're looking for great people, and to us, we saw there's a sort of a bit of a mismatch. So that sort of was the idea behind the panel. I'd like to first introduce the panel. We have Ishtar Twilat, who's the founder and CEO of Kvalitet Studentkompetens. She's also a former student at Stockholm University, so thank you very much. Hjalmar, who is CEO and chairman and co-founder of Wrapp, but he also was a founder of Reptile and Sendit, and is a serial veteran entrepreneur, you could say. And then we have Jane as well, who's built multiple companies. Again, a great veteran serial entrepreneur, and now is CEO of Telco Networks, but also started up companies like Bluefin, and also been a fantastic angel investor and a board member. So again, somebody great for the community. And Gustav, last but not least, is a chief product officer at Spotify, and he's also an investor, an advisor to a company, for example, 13 Lab. And me and Gustav actually got to know each other. Actually, this leads into the first question. You know, we got to know each other when you started your first company.
2003.
Yeah, 2003.
2004.
So maybe you should start with that. You know, so what got you to start your first company?
So I started together with some friends. I founded my first company in 2003. I studied at the Royal Institute of Technology. And to be quite honest, which is a good segue from this, one of the reasons that we started this company was that there weren't any other jobs to be found. In 2003, this was, after really the IT crash had bottomed out. So there were no one employing anyone. I did my master thesis at it was Telia back then, Telia Research, very exciting. I wanted to work there, and they wanted me to work there, but they moved all research to Finland, so basically I was unemployed. And I'm not sure, I'd like to say I would have started companies anyway, but I'm not sure. If someone offered me a really safe, nice job, maybe I wouldn't have. So I think unemployment is probably good for entrepreneurship, and really, it's been really fortunate for me. I would probably be doing something very different if that wasn't the case back then, that I had to try a little harder.
No regrets?
No regrets, definitely not.
Jane, maybe you can hear about what your experience are in terms of, what got you into the startup world?
Well, I had my first company when I was 8, so I'm basically an entrepreneur from the beginning. But when I arrived in Sweden, I was an immigrant with a new university education, and got a job that really didn't pay enough. My husband was starting a company, so I decided to start one alongside. It works, guys. You get money, you get more fun. Why not?
Hjalmar, what's your story?
Yeah, so I actually never had real work, except no one has actually tried to employ me. I don't know why, but no. So my story is slightly different. When I was in gymnasium studying finance, I was supposed to go to an event similar to this, where you were supposed to guide it what you would like to do when you finish school. And I was actually late to the event, and the only open class was actually an entrepreneur that was supposed to talk about entrepreneurship. So without getting a mark for not being there, I slipped into that room actually 20 minutes late, because he was 22 minutes late. And then I was very fascinated about his story, how about he grew a company, and he started a company, grew a company, and he was running that company. And from that day on, I realized that I would like to try the entrepreneurship career. So I started my first company straight out of gymnasium, and I said I'm going to take 1 year off and take little risk, most likely with little reward, but just going through the process of starting a company before I start actually studying here at Stockholm University. And so I started a cleaning company doing staircases, just to be able to do something that I can actually shut down very quickly. And when I was doing that, I actually realized that I got a good idea about something else, and so I said I can do that simultaneously while I'm studying here. And then I ended up studying here. I took 80 points, I think, roughly here at Stockholm University. And that time I had 40 employees in a company, and my wife was pregnant, so something has to go. And so it was actually my studies here. and not my company nor my wife that I'm still married to.
Good choice.
And I have 2 kids now. So I kind of, went straight into entrepreneurship rather than to do the kind of classical thing by, doing all your studies first and then work somewhere and then do something around entrepreneurship.
But just leading into that, I mean, starting a company is not the only way to get into this type of entrepreneurship, you could say. It's about teams as well. So maybe the question of, for you, what do you look for when you're building a team? What are the things that you think about, Hjalmar? What's in terms of...
First of all, I think, doing startups, and I've done 5, but 3 that has been fairly successful, I hope. The third one is that we're working on right now, which is Sendit. That was the pioneer of mobile internet, actually. I started that company back in '94. The same year Netscape came out with a browser, and we had one dial-up internet supplier here in Sweden at that year. And I believed that mobile internet going to be big. So that was kind of bleeding edge, to say the least. And when we built a team there, I think, at that time I didn't have the luxury, so I couldn't hire senior people because I was fairly unexperienced myself, especially in the IT sector. So I was kind of able to hire people, that were very passionate about the vision I had with the company, which I think is super important, but they lacked experience. So everyone had the same kind of profile, which most likely is not the ideal situation. You would like to mix, some people with a battle experience and with a lot of people that are super passionate about doing things. So the mix is the thing that is very important, and actually be very open and transparent both with yourself and the team what your strengths and weaknesses are, so you kind of add people to the team that are complementary to yourself, which is of course a luxury to be able to do that. So, but I was not able to do that with Sendit, and then with Rebtel, which I started afterwards, I was able to raise a lot of money very early on in that company, and then I hired actually way too senior people too early in the process, and the company got a bit homogeneous in that sense. Which was not good, so I actually had to fire a whole management team there and get the right mix later on. And it was a very bumpy ride with that company, which is a successful company today. I'm still the chairman of that company. And I hope third time here with Wrapp, which I'm a CEO right now, I think I got a better mix of both people with more experience, now including myself, and then a very ambitious and competent team with a mixed bag of experience from different startup companies and from the IT sector in general. So my experience is that it's good to have the mix of experience and young and passionate people. And I think what's very encouraging right now in the startups company in Sweden right now is that we're seeing a lot of smart people leaving the slightly bigger startup companies now and doing their own stuff and starting companies themselves. And I think we've seen a lot of good people coming out from, Trade Doubler and other companies that actually done their own businesses. So I think we get a good ecosystem right now here in Sweden. I think it's a good opportunity for people finishing their studies to join these startups and learn, and then later on have an opportunity to actually do their own stuff as well.
Ishtar, how about you? Because you're just sort of started off your business and maybe looking at a different perspective. What do you think about,
No, I fully agree. I'm looking for those who can share my vision and passion. However, they have to be self-coordinated and commercially minded. So if you're working in a startup, you need to sell, and that's a crucial factor for me.
Okay. And Gustav, when you look at recruitment, doing interviews, suit or hoodie, which one are you going to get? Which type of person do you think is most interesting?
If I'm going to get which?
The guy at the suit or the guy who's being the...
That's too easy. It's going to be the hoodie, of course. No, but so that depends on like where in my career I was. When I recruit at Spotify, I look for specific roles with specific skills. But actually, the profile is very similar. You still want someone with a lot of drive and entrepreneurship. I think Hjalmar mentioned 2 things. One is passion. I think that's true everywhere, whether you own a startup yourself or whether you recruit in a startup. And then what Jan also mentioned, to recruit to your own weaknesses, which is really hard because then you have to admit that you have weaknesses. Yeah. But once you've done that, if you manage to figure them out and fill in those gaps, you're going to have a much stronger team. In terms of seniority, I have this exactly the same experience as Hjalmar. The first time around, no one senior wanted to work in the company. They weren't prepared to have that kind of salary and take that kind of risk. And that worked out anyway. Would certainly have done it differently today. A lot of stuff that you can avoid, but it does work. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have a chance to first work in a startup. I would probably have avoided a lot of mistakes, but that's not to say you shouldn't try.
And so, Jane, maybe if we spoke before about the different stages and different types of people that you need. I mean, do you think are also really important component for sort of the audience to understand that the companies they're always searching for different people as they grow and so on?
I've worked, I guess I'm one of the few people here who's actually worked in large companies as well as started my own company. And I can say that in a large company, you work for your boss, okay? You make your boss successful. And in a startup, you make the company successful, right? Your loyalty is to the company, and that's an awful lot easier for an ethical young person to buy into, that you're working on the company and not on your boss's success.
Yep.
I think that's one huge difference. The startup, you're not as secure, but on the other hand, big companies nowadays, you're not secure either.
Right.
In terms of recruiting, I try to build a mix of skills and a mix of personality types. I am very much of a motor myself, so I'm always looking for a break. Somebody says, wait a minute, let me just calculate through that. I think we have to wait 3 months to afford that. Or don't you think we should finish the deal with Russia before we... Oops, you're right. Yes, we'll wait. Let me get that deal done with Russia. I need that. I also think that in general you can recruit. There's pretty good research on how to recruit people.
Yeah.
You do it on IQ and on conscientiousness. In other words, on attitude and IQ, and then on skill, okay, with what you're doing. Experience helps, but not always. One good thing about young people is that you don't generally know what's impossible, and so it's not.
Yeah. Great. Those are some very interesting insights. But I think there's also some misperceptions, and maybe Gustav, I just wanted to touch on this one where, again, you spoke about, the risk involved in working in the digital world, and I just, Gustav, what do you think? Is it always that risky? And again, I made the joke of sort of, do you wear a hoodie or a suit? Like, how serious are these companies? And, so, because I think there's a lot of people there, maybe in the audience, they're thinking, okay, so what is my career? And, the thing is, like you say, people are worried about maybe losing their job in the end, but, is it really that risky? That's
actually what I was going to comment on. I think there is a misperception. You have this thing with, the more risk you take, the more reward you can get. You think that if you go into a startup, you take incredible risk, but you could get incredible reward. Well, that's a really sound financial theory. It's not necessarily true, because I think what seems to happen is when times are really bad, people get fired from big companies as well. So I think you overestimate how secure you are in a big company. Actually, you're probably less important in a big company if you're a young student who just came into that company. You'd be one of the first to go. If you perform well in a startup, you're going to be vital to that company. And I think if you did get fired from a startup, which would be terrible at the time, I think the next time you apply for a job, you're going to be much better off if you did something really important in a company where you were one of 5 who had a core mission versus being one of 20,000. I worked at Yahoo, like 14,000 people. You don't really matter in a company you can't affect it even if you work really hard. At least not when you're new.
So Hjalmar, I'm going to let you speak, but we're going to start getting, after Hjalmar has spoken, I think we should open up and get some questions.
We just like to add to what Gustav said, which I think if you aggregate all the startups in let's say the internet sector, that sector per se is actually growing very, very quickly. And if you gain experience in that sector, you're going to have a much actually more secure career path based on that. If you would go to a very big company in a shrinking sector where it actually outsource people to other regions, etc., those companies are not growing. But of course, in that specific company you're in, you may take risk. But if you perform well and you gain experience, it's not going to be difficult, even if that company is not succeeding, to actually get a job in a slightly more successful company in the internet space.
Exactly.
And the nice thing with this sector as well is very non-cyclical, or it's not part of the cyclical economy, because it has an underlying growth. So, I mean, if you look at a company like Wrapp or Spotify and others, you know, we are constantly growing with a rate which is very high double digits, sometimes even triple digits when it comes to adding people and so forth. And we are constantly looking for people that has the right experience. And that experience you couldn't gain for 10 years ago. That's experience people have gained over the last 3-4 years potentially. And it's very few of those people around. And therefore I think it's a very good career move for students actually to join these startups. You may not pick the right startup the first time. Hopefully you do a better job the second time if that's the case. And maybe the third time you do your own startup. And then you have gained the experience and you will have the right network to get finance and so forth. And knowing people that are going to pitch in as angel investors, et cetera, et cetera.
So maybe just to wrap up, I just thought it could be interesting for people to know what are the top 2 or top 3 people you guys are looking for, and so just so people get a bit of an idea of, what kind of competencies you're looking for and where do you see sort of the squeeze. So Jane, if you...
I'm looking for somebody with very good communication skills, who understands technology, can write about it in a sales manner, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm also looking for technical sales who will travel around the world, and I mean really around the world. We're including Novosibirsk and Bahrain and Nigeria and South America in this, and talk about technology to operators. Also a communications and technical job. That's what I'm looking for right now.
Christoph, how long is your list?
It's, if you look at Spotify/jobs, it's very long.
Yeah.
So I think for any skill out here, there's definitely a role. Personally, we're looking for a lot of developers, but personally I'm also looking for product people. You don't have to be developers. You have to have insight into product and how people use products, and you have to understand complex business models. But then we're looking for business development, for people who work with licensing content, all kinds of stuff actually.
Ishtar, do you want to comment on that?
Well, like I said before, except that they have to be sell-oriented and commercial-minded, they have to work hard and be willing to take risks and also be self-motivated. It's very important for me.
Great. Hjalmar?
I would like to tap into that as well. I think first what you look at is passion. I mean, does this person has a passion for the vision that your company has and are keen to join a very fast-moving company and understand that it's not a 9-to-5 job that you're joining, because then, the startups will not win. And then I think, from a more specific perspective for Wrapp right now, we're looking for, of course, great engineers to come in and work with our development team, and especially as well on the product management side to understand, the social graph and the idea around how to tap into the smartphone platforms and using Facebook and then the online to offline opportunity that we are kind of working within that space with Wrapp. And then, of course, on the sales side, we're looking for young, very passionate people that, very, very keen to actually, get sales done and close deals around the world and willing to travel and do that. So obviously for us it's important, that we are entering a lot of markets right now that you need, if you have a second language, that's great, that if you speak Spanish or French or German fluently, that will definitely help for us.
Great, thank you. So now we need a brave person to ask the first question. We have 4 people with mics. If you raise your hand, somebody's got to raise their hand. The opportunity of a lifetime. There we go, great. We have can you get a mic down? So it's mic number, I don't know if that's a 6 or it's a 9.
Thanks. My question is for startups when dealing with suppliers and negotiations, what advice do you have?
Negotiation with suppliers.
Yeah,
Try to have several, because they will all squeeze you as far as they can. And tell them you have several. We had a really good negotiation today where we had people selling us one kind of boxes, and we said, well, these other ones are also giving us an offer, and we got prices down by 40% in one sentence. Several.
So, okay, maybe we'll take the man in the yellow t-shirt.
Hi, I'm actually working in a startup right now, and I think one of the biggest dilemmas I face is that to what extent should you limit your initiative? There's sometimes where I see a really cool company and I ask my boss, do you think we could be acquired by them? But do you think that's too much? Are you, as a student, are you doing too much if you take that much initiative? Do you think there's a limit to the amount of initiative you can take?
Sorry, so what the question is?
The question is that, do you think as a student intern in a startup or working in a startup, there's a limit that the CEO takes to initiative, like, okay, this is your place and that's all? Or do you think it should be unbounded?
I think, on that question, I think, first of all, it's probably more a venture capital term, but I mean, companies should not, get sold, they should get acquired. So you need, of course, to get acquired, you need to position the company for that, which is another kind of tactical strategy that you need to build. But I mean, I think from your point of view, I think the most important thing to do is to build a great business. If you build a great growing business and it's actually becoming more strategic for whatever vendor, it's most likely going to get acquired or at least getting bids on that company. So I think that's more a strategic product strategy and then flawless execution that actually position companies in that direction. And I think, in 2000 we had some other situations where actually company got acquired for very non-rational reasons, to be honest. I think those days are over. Now it's all about great strategy and straight, very good vision and flawless execution.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think as a CEO, there's a big risk to focus on being acquired by someone because you're going to lose focus on your business. And if you fail in that acquisition attempt, many companies actually fall over because they spent all their focus and their engineers on the wrong thing.
And I heard something else from your question, was just how much am I allowed to say to my boss without him getting mad, right? And that depends on you, and it depends on your boss. And in general, the bigger the company, the less you can say. Because to begin with, there's only 3 of you sitting around one table and eating the same bean soup. You can say anything. When there's 150 of you and you say something like that in public, it isn't as popular.
So maybe take a question here, and I think we have one question here in the middle, and I think we probably have to wrap up after that.
Yes. I'm running an e-commerce together with Annie to the right here, and we've done that for about 2 years. And we are currently looking for external capital. So my question is, what should we do to get like 5 minutes of your time?
Is that to me or is that to the audience?
All of you.
So, because we have investors here as well. I don't know.
It's probably not worth to get 5 minutes of my time because I'm not doing any investments right now.
Yeah.
Since I thought I would be doing that, but honestly I ended up doing another startup again. So right now I'm kind of bottom down doing that. So I could probably give you good advice about what not to do because I've probably done a lot of mistakes. I know I've done most of the mistakes you can do doing startups so far. At least you know that you evolve when you do new mistakes, which I probably do right now. But so I think maybe if someone here who is more angel investor.
I have a feeling that probably the rest of them are going to be having the same answer. Maybe I'm not sure, but I think you did a good job right now. So that's you've done the first start. It's a matter of trying to get in and meeting people and getting your voice out there. So for us, we actually are. You can get a hold of us, in many different ways. So there's either through our website or through directly contacting one of our people. So that's the way to do it.
Don't give up.
Yeah, don't give up is the main thing. I think this will be the final question.
Hello, my name is Torbjörn Nordling and I'm currently pursuing a PhD. So I would like to ask you, how do you value a PhD?
Depends on what it is in, but can we start with that?
Yeah, but none of you really focused on education. So what's actually the importance that you attach to having an education and degree and a PhD in particular?
So obviously, as an example, it depends on the kind of company you're doing. I think if you're founding Google, you only hired PhDs for a long time. I'm an investor in a company right now that is really built entirely on very complicated technology, so it wouldn't be possible without PhDs. So it depends on the company, I would say.
We have a company that it seems to me that they only hire PhDs. So, I don't know. Now maybe there are 30 people. So.
I mean, if your company's vision is to differentiate, for example, you can differentiate a company in different ways. You may be like the cheapest, kind of Tele2, or you can be technically the most advanced and be faster than everyone else, like Google is trying to be, and to some extent Spotify, then you have a big need for PhDs. But you're going to probably have to pay more because PhDs are more expensive. So then it's a strategy to say we pay a bit more to get the best engineers because one of our differentiators are speed or technology. Or you may say it's price, then you probably won't hire expensive PhDs. So it depends on what your strategy is.
So I think that wraps up this part of the session. Thank you very much. I think, applause for the panel. Thank you, for coming out.
All right. Nice to see so many people here. Thank you very much for being here. It has been a bit nervous. I've been a bit nervous about people showing up and getting this going, but it looks good. Thank you everyone for being here. It's actually really cool because we have all you students, all you people interested in entrepreneurship here, as well as and all you represent 5 different universities here in Stockholm. Everyone interested in entrepreneurship and innovation and all that, as well as 15 organizations that are going to be representing themselves here later that are involved in entrepreneurship and innovation. So that's going to be really, really, really awesome. So I hope as many of you as possible stay and meet representatives from your school and talk about what opportunities you have and how can they help you to build up your company. So I'm Sebastian Fuchs, a student here from Stockholm University. I'm also a board member of a student entrepreneurship organization called Exitera. And we basically run three competitions, one community and a student incubator, business incubator where I'm managing, where I'm the manager. And all we do is basically focused on promoting entrepreneurship and increasing knowledge about the opportunities of starting your company and doing your own thing. So that's really nice, and that's why we are really happy to see so many of you here, and really happy that Stockholm University embraced this idea for this event, so that's nice. You're going to meet our next guests, 2 persons, and those guys are super entrepreneurs, super successful. One of them, former CTO and founder, co-founder of Spotify, now active in a social gift service called Wrapp. You met Hjalmar earlier, and now you're going to meet the CTO. And also another guy, I think you all know who I'm talking about, former CTO and co-founder of Skype, now CEO of Atomico, a venture capital firm active all over the world. So without further ado, warm welcome to Andreas Ehn and Niklas Zennström. Welcome. All right, thank you for being here.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Are your mics on?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so when was the last time you were in, Niklas, you were in Sweden?
I was here a month ago or something.
Yeah?
Yeah.
This is for you.
It's one of the places which becomes more and more attractive to go to. And it's not because of the weather, it's because there's more and more really interesting companies in Stockholm, which makes me really happy to see, because there's, given the size of Stockholm and Sweden, it's just more and more really, really high quality companies here, which is exciting.
Yeah, and you actually mentioned earlier about why you think there's such an explosion of new startups here in Sweden. Was it related to the weather?
Yeah, I think so. Like when it's like this outside, and what else can you do, and then sit inside and think about creating a business.
Yeah. You agree, Andreas?
Yeah. Not much else to do with this weather.
No. Just build companies. So let's move on. Like, I know you both of you you have dual degrees. We are sitting here among a lot of students, and you have degrees from engineering and business. So tell us, is that super important when you start a company, or why dual degrees?
Well, I think it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that I do. I did study both at KTH and Handels, but I dropped out to join a startup. So,
yeah. How come you dropped out?
It was an opportunity that was too exciting to miss.
So how did you go through that process of prioritizing? Like, okay, it's enough of the school books. Let's do this for real. What kind of decision did you go through?
So I joined a company called Startle, which is based here in Stockholm. Started working part-time, thinking I could do that while finishing my thesis. Ended up working more than full-time, and at some point thinking, hey, I might as well be paid full-time if I'm working full-time. So I sort of put the thesis on hold, and after Startle came Spotify, and I never really got back to it.
So how did you go from Startle to Spotify?
So at Startle's CTO back then was Daniel Ek, who is the CEO and co-founder of Spotify. So we started talking about that idea in early spring 2006. And I decided to join as Spotify's founding CTO and hired the tech team and started running the tech organization and product over there. So this was in August 2006.
So and then you just went from there. Like, this is what you want to do.
Yeah, it's been startups ever since.
When did do you call yourself an entrepreneur, by the way?
I'm sorry.
Do you call yourself an entrepreneur, or how do you think about?
I haven't ever really. If so, this would probably be the first time.
Yeah.
That I could reasonably claim.
Should we decide in here now that he's an entrepreneur? Do you agree, by the way? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So what about you, Niklas?
Yeah.
Tell us, because you have a history of, like, how come you gave up very successful career with good salaries and secure environment? What made you do this pivot and just like, okay?
Well, I think for me it was, in a way, I also started to work for an entrepreneurial company. Back then, you didn't have as many, startups as you have now. I think for me, the best company I could work for was Tele2, which was a startup when I joined, about 20 people. And I learned a whole lot how a company worked and how to scale, how to do international expansion and take on and challenge the big monopolies and so forth. And at some point I thought, okay, I've learned, and now I know pretty much how to do this, and it would be great to try your own wings and try to, if you can do it yourself. So, but for me it was also, it took quite some time to make that decision. And I think the issue is that the further you get maybe in your career in an established company, the more you feel that you have to give up. And then that decision becomes harder. So, and I think it's also, if you work in a company that's growing, as long as you're doing well, you can progress, you get a, salary increase, maybe not a title and a promotion. Going out and leaving that and starting your own company is a big risk, because you're being exposed. And I think a lot of us are, we're afraid of taking that risk, and because you're exposing yourself to failure, and then people say, well, really, should you, maybe you should have stayed with a company and keep that safe job. So for me, I think that was, it was a tough decision, but the day we made that decision, I felt, really good about it.
So what about, like, I'm sitting here and I know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs here in the audience, and people have tried to start a company and they've done not so well. How come? What's your secrets? Why are you doing everything right? Are you doing everything right?
I think you have to do things a lot of times, and if you try a lot of times, you will succeed. If even if you cannot play golf, I'm a lousy golf player, but I'm sure if I try to hit the ball several times, I'm going to have one very good swing and good, hit that ball, and it's going to go quite some distance. So and I think that you need to try. And the reality, statistics is against you as an entrepreneur, that you're for sure more likely to fail. But I think what's important is to just think of that as an iteration. okay, that iteration did not work, so let's debrief, what can I learn from that? And then you move on with another project.
Yeah.
But one other thing what's also interesting, because you're saying entrepreneurs and starting companies, and I think one thing that's, and it's not about everyone should not start a company. I think that being an entrepreneur is also someone who's working in a startup company. You don't need to be the one who's actually starting the company. If you join a company when it's 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 people, if you join that company, I would call that person an entrepreneur, because it's still entrepreneurial. You have the founder, and then you have the other people who are joining that person.
It's also a great startup school, essentially, for when you want to do it yourself, eventually. You can learn a lot about both technology and business going to school, but really having that hands-on experience of building a company and doing that with people who've done it before, extremely valuable.
Yeah, the pre-panel actually talked about like how to build great teams. What do you think? What should a founder do, or co-founders do, to get that kind of team going in terms of like management strategy and I know Hjalmar mentioned about complementary people, but how do you know if a coder is good or bad, for example?
The reality is you don't always know before. You figure that out after a few weeks, and a person join a company, and many times I find out is you need to spend time to get to know people and maybe do some trial projects and so forth. But I think what's important is for the founders of a company also not to be afraid of hiring people who are much smarter than yourself, and because that's if then you can look very good by having a lot of very smart people around you who actually make things happen. And that's whatever you do, that's always beneficial. And I think if you're insecure, you're always going to hire people who are maybe not so smart or maybe not so experienced as yourself. And then you're going to end up having to tell people what to do, and then it's going to be a complete disaster. And I think if you're a bit more comfortable with yourself, you're going to hire people who are really, really good at really good at what they're doing, and you should let them do their stuff, and you should, as a founder, you're the one who's leading the way. We're going to go that direction, but then the people around you, they're going to find out how to do that.
Yeah,
I agree. People looking at sort of the hierarchy of a company often think that someone's the boss and sort of making all decisions, but as you say, like hiring smart people, I'd like to take a view of seeing management as more of a support function, actually sort of fixing the problems that are standing in the way of people trying to do their job, and making sure that, because the smart people that you hire, they will always have more domain knowledge, more detailed knowledge of the specific problem at hand than you do. So letting them make the decisions and being sure that you're sort of leading them in roughly the right direction is what it's about.
So in Sweden we have like, I have to name drop some of our super companies, because like we're in Sweden with international entrepreneurs here. So we have iSettle, Videoplaza, Klarna, Tripbirds, MySQL, SoundCloud, RevTel, TradeDoubler, Skype, Wrapp, Spotify. I can keep going forever. Like, why, in terms of what you're saying in management, is because in Sweden tend to be a bit decentralized. People tend to let people do their own thing and bring a lot of people into the decisions. Is that some kind of key value, or can you put your fingers on why Swedish companies, except from the weather of course, why Swedish companies are so successful? Or are they successful in terms of international?
I would think that, I travel around a lot all around the world to try to find good companies to invest in and to try to help to grow. And I have to say that Sweden is punching way above its weight in terms of great companies, and also maybe not the same quantity of companies, but the quality is very, very, very solid. And I think that what you're saying has something to do with it, that we are not so hierarchical. We like to be very pragmatic and let people make decisions, and you don't need to go through a hierarchy, and that's just a culture which I think is very suitable for creativism and for getting companies off the ground.
In Sweden, I hear a lot, as working in entrepreneurial environment, people talk about tur, talang, timing, the 3 T's, luck, talent, timing. is that the only variables, or what do you think? Yes.
Well, if you look at some very successful companies, it's easy to see that, you can see that they were lucky because they got timing right, and maybe some other people had tried to do the same thing years before and it failed because something wasn't ready for it. There's a lot of truth in that. On the other hand, what is luck? Was it just pure randomness, or was it that those people were the most prepared in order to capture the opportunity, or that they had been trying to do this for a long time and eventually they were right timing-wise? So there's, but people, there are things you can do to improve your luck, so to speak.
Yeah.
You need a little bit of luck, and you need to avoid bad luck. But I would like to add a fourth T, which is toughness.
Toughness.
Yes,
okay.
because it's you can always read about success stories but behind a lot of successful companies there are probably a lot of times which are really, really tough and really, really hard, very difficult. And I think a lot of successful companies sometimes go through this period when it's going to be really, really hard. And when the founders of the companies have to be tough and just continue to believe in what they're doing, because if you're the founder, there's a lot of people, when things are not going that great, they're going to be looking at you and see if are you confident or not. If you're not that confident, so don't know about this, then people are going to stop believing.
Yeah. Tenacity is probably another good one.
Yeah.
Stick to your guns. That doesn't mean that you should never change strategy, of course. I mean, there's a lot of companies who are very successful but are doing something very different from what they started out doing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you mean that if you have an idea and you have how much can you change?
Everything.
Everything.
I mean, the most important thing that you're building is probably your team. And if you find out that you have a super team but you're working on the wrong idea, try to get people to work on something else.
But when you build up Spotify dev team, what was your strategy of getting the best developers? Are you using that today as well?
It was relatively easy at first because I more or less hired all the best ones from where I went to school that year and the years plus minus 1-2 years because it was very easy to know who they were. So there it was more which is a situation you're always in at a startup. You're typically always selling, so it was about me selling the vision of Spotify to them to get them to join because they were amazing, so they could get a job anywhere. So I had to convince them not to go to work for Google or not to keep working on their PhD, but to join us, which was a completely unknown company at that time and sort of a high-risk industry. So many people had failed doing music online before. After a while, you sort of exhaust those initial networks, but then you already have a team in place. You sort of keep using the team you have in order to expand your networks and finding more great people.
So how did you build Skype from the beginning? What kind of strategy did you apply?
For building a team?
For building a team and taking the company from you and Jonas Fries when you sit down and made your skits on napkins and stuff. How did you create a communication tool that everyone uses all over the world?
Yeah. So it's interesting we talk about timing, but sometimes we had pretty bad timing when we started our first company, which was Kazaa. It was just as the .com crash hit us, and we wanted to build this peer-to-peer file sharing, universal file sharing system. At the same time, Napster started to have pretty bad time. So we had a lot of things working against us. But I did a little bit like Andreas. I hired some of the best software developers that I had been working with previously when I was with Tele2, and that became the kind of the nucleus of the team that we started working with. And we started, we were a very small team, and from Kazaa we started another company, Jolted, and these guys followed, and then from that, basically, pivoted that to become Skype, and then we took that core team. So it was, people, and that, it's like a snowball effect. So those core people that worked with us kind of became a bit bigger, and then it's about, a good team is hiring a good team. There's a saying, an A team is hiring an A team, a B team is hiring a C team. This is a little bit what I said before, was that if you are confident, you hire smart people, and then other smart people want to join that group, and then you create something that's very positive.
So I'm just going to tell you guys, I will have a few more questions, and then we're going to invite you for some questions. So just raise your hands, and we have some people from Exitera running around with mics for you to grab. So keep your questions ready for in a few minutes. They're going to be invited. Also, for you who are watching from the live stream on su.se, you can tweet your questions, and I will look them through here on Twitter, and use the hashtag Exitera. You can see this. I don't know if you guys on the live stream can see it, but EXC in the beginning, it's the right pronunciation. So please prepare your questions for in a few minutes we're going to invite you to talk. And before we continue, how many of you are using Spotify? Like everyone. How many are using Skype?
Much more.
Did you count?
No.
And
how many are you using Wrapp?
Yeah. I getting somewhere.
Okay, we'll be back in a year.
Yeah. Rest of you have to check it out.
And Wrapp is how old?
We launched in mid-November.
Yeah.
The company was founded in May.
Yeah. And you actually already got rounds funding for over $10 million US, right? I think. And you built. How many are you now?
In the team?
Yeah.
We're getting close to 30, including people who have signed but haven't quite joined yet.
Yeah. And you're getting into how many countries?
Well, all of them eventually.
Yeah. Yes, I think that kind of explosion development is worth an applause. And you met Hjalmar earlier in the pre-panel, and Andreas said they're going to do some crazy stuff with Wrapp, I'm sure. So why did Atomico find interest in Wrapp? Wrapp is you've been around both rounds, right? You've been involved.
Yes, I mean we were leading the Series A investment, and together with Greylock, who came in after us. So it's a little bit like what we do when we look for companies to invest in, is that there are a few things you look for. And the first, number one thing is the team. You want to look for a team who have the vision, determination, passion, leadership, and then also that they have a product or an offering that is somehow taking advantage of changes in the market around you. And in this case, and also that creates that they're going after something that is a big opportunity, something that can scale, become a worldwide leader in its category, or even define a new category. So actually Wrapp ticked those boxes. The team was excellent. People like Andreas, who had experience from starting companies. Hjalmar, of course, also one of the most experienced serial entrepreneurs we have. And the rest of the team are just fantastic. And they also got this, they have a good nucleus of a team that also attracting a lot of other good people. But the other thing that they did was that they were coming up with this product that this comes back to timing. They did something, or they are doing something that you could not have done 2 years ago, and in 2 years or in 2 months or whatever, it's going to be too late. So it's just a window when they can execute this. And that's because they're taking advantage of the social graph, they're taking advantage of mobile apps, and then it just happens that gift cards is in the US is how many?
$100 billion.
Yeah, $100 billion market. It's a huge market. And because what's great is because it's gift cards, it's something that involves transactions. So unlike some other businesses, it's actually something that you can actually create a real business, because it's, at the end of the day, it's always cool to create cool apps and services, but what's interesting is to create businesses. And so you need to see, okay, what is the opportunity for this to become a business rather than a cool service that we like to use. So those are the key ingredients where we thought it was interesting. And then it is a little bit like what happens now is that the really good companies, they can almost pick and choose who they want to, who they can have as an investor. So, so we had to spend a lot of time convincing Hjalmar and Andreas that we would be a good investor, and they're giving us a lot of to-do lists every day.
But that's not the situation for everyone. Doesn't have that kind of track record and that kind of experience. So what advice would you give in terms of investment perspective and in terms of an entrepreneur's perspective? How should you think when you're looking for funds?
Well, I think that first of all you should, so the three things I talked about was the team. I'm sure there's something that the previous panel talked about. And this is actually pretty good. When you're at university, when you have several disciplines, you can look around and actually create a good team with different diverse, with a diverse background. So it's not just a bunch of people who went to, study business or a bunch of people who are software developers, but mix those together, and even better have some behavioral science people who can understand how people react and how they want to use services. So those are important things, and also try to be create something that is innovative and that solves real the everyday problem. But just doing those things is not going to land you an investment, because it's a lot more things that that need to happen, and you need to do things at the right time. But so sometimes you also try to bootstrap things, and what's really, really interesting today, what is so exciting, is that today you don't need to go out and build a server, a data center. When I started creating businesses, and it was all about, the first thing you did was to go out and get some servers and plug them together, and you have to recompile the Linux kernel to make it a bit better and patch it, and that's and then that's what you had to work on. And those was investments, and then how could you market your service? Well, did you buy banner ads, and what did you do? Today, you can just put your software on the cloud. You can use the social graph or app stores to promote your services. So the advice would almost be to try to do something in like a really, really mean fashion. Be 4 people in your team and do something that kind of that can you see if it works or not. So that you don't actually need to go out and get a lot of money, or you can actually start. If you can code yourself, you don't need any money to get started, really. And I think that's probably rather than sitting and writing a pitch deck for an idea, that's going to be hard to get financing for.
Agreed. If you have a running service with real users on, that's something that an investor will be much more interested in looking at than the most perfect slide deck. And you will get actual data from what people do with your service, and that's the only way to sort of prove that you have a point, that there is worth and value in what you're building. Before you have launched, it's really hard to tell whether it's going to work or not.
It's impossible. It's completely, you can look at something in theory, it looks perfect, but you never know until you actually launched it if it's going to work or not.
So how many business plans do you read? How many cases do you see?
It's almost that you try to read fewer business plans, but kind of to hear people explain what they're doing instead. But I think we're getting thousands inquiries every year, and so there's I think it's not the business plans that are interesting. It's much more interested to look at a prototype or something that a real product.
So people should work on the product, get it as far as possible with as little cash as possible before they approach
today you can't
investor.
do that. I mean, of course, now we're assuming that everyone is doing like internet services, right? If you're going to do something that is an energy business, well, it's harder to do that prototype with no money, because you may have to build some physical stuff and have to deploy it. So this is of course very, very different in different businesses.
What about if you know nothing about coding? How should you, and you have a great idea and you want to go take it to the next step, and like, okay, I really got something here. What's the next step?
Find a co-founder who's very good at coder.
Okay.
Yeah. Get a technical co-founder. Really.
Yeah. Try to find an Andreas Ehn. How should you give the co-founder, like, yeah, okay, let's split the company 50-50 and then go crazy, or should you like, okay, I'm going to pay you money, or like, how does one approach? Is this, how do you think people should build their teams from the beginning? I mean, like from day one, they have the napkin with the business idea, or they only had an idea, like how?
I think this is always like a dilemma where, you know, you look at, you say that you're the one who's come up with these things, and that like, this is my idea, and do I have to give, you know, a lot of it away to these other people and to investors? Well, I don't want, I mean, because I want to, this is my idea, I want to really own it. Then most of those people will probably fail. I mean, there's always a few exceptions. The ones who are more likely to be successful are the ones who like to share and say, well, and to understand that they need to align interests. So all the people they bring in should be, you know, have as many co-founders as possible. Doesn't mean that everyone has to have, you know, like equal share, but maybe you can have, you know, 2 to 4 people who are actually the co-founders, and you should, you know, you come up with a way to split it up, and then the other next set of people you're hiring should also be incentivized.
Yeah.
I think it's critical.
So let's talk trends. Like, we have super successful tech entrepreneurs here. What technology trends do you see in a few sentences? What's coming up next?
That's always the question. What's coming up? What's after mobile? Is it what's after the social?
How far is the mobile industry coming? Like,
well,
I think everyone in the incubator we have like 4 or 5 startups that are working with mobile devices. Yeah. Like, how is this trend that will keep continuing, or would it go?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to go away from mobile. Say like this whole thing that we had mobility. Let's stop that. Let's go and plug ourselves into the wall. That's not going to happen. So that today, everything is mobile, and that was a transition that we saw a few years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, when you started to see companies who thought about completely mobile as center of their strategy. Before it was like, well, we have our, you're developing services for the full size web browser, and maybe I had a mobile extension. That's not the case anymore. So that's just, of course, going to continue. And what's really exciting is that the growth and explosion in smartphones is just going to continue to increase. The prices are coming down, which means that more people in emerging markets are going to have access to smartphones, which means that there is a whole different behavior if you have smartphones in hands of people in Africa or out on the countryside in Brazil. They're different. They may not be using Wrapp. They may be using something that they can do trading of their whatever they're producing on their farms. So there's just the fact that mobile handsets becoming cheaper and is going to create more and more opportunities online.
Yeah, and I mean the smartphone will become the default window to the internet, not the computer, and mobile can't be sort of an afterthought. It has to be your first interface when you build something new. I think, so in terms of trends, I think we sort of touched on them, but there are 4 sort of overarching trends that matter if you're doing a tech startup: mobile and the social graph that's available through the Facebook APIs. 2 of them that we mentioned. The third would be cloud computing, which you also mentioned. That makes it just so much easier to launch whatever you're doing with zero capex, zero investment in hardware. And the fourth one is that we have really good rapid development tools, which aren't only for prototyping anymore, which you can use for building your actual product. And these 4 things taken together, the sort of tech innovation that has happened during the last, say, 10 years that has resulted into these being available for everyone, means that the time is ripe for a lot of business innovation, I think. So a lot of the things we see coming out now and during the last couple of years haven't been really that technically innovative, because there's such a good foundation to stand on, but there's so much that you can do now with these. So that means you can have rather non-technical ideas. You'll still need a technical mindset and that technical co-founder to sort of get it to work. But
we refer to this as the technology industry, but it's really the product industry. And as Andreas says, is that the core used to be, when I said before, you have to plug, get your server farm to work. Today, forget about that. Now it's all about product innovation and product design. That's become much more important. I mean, what you guys are doing at Wrapp is not so much about hardcore technology innovation. It's not like sending packets, to the other side of around the moon or something. It's just designing great products, and that becomes more important. Which means that it's actually the emphasis becomes more of on product design and understanding how people interact with products rather than hardcore engineering.
Let's talk a bit practical issues. Like a lot of people here wanted to start a company. How should they? What's the first step they should look, and should they analyze their business idea, or should they go out and try the product or try the idea? Like, how do you start?
I think you should build what's typically called a minimum viable product. You can Google this term, and there's so much to read about it, and it can take many forms. The most extreme proponents of this philosophy, they would say that you don't even need to build a product. You can just do a design, and then you can take out ads online for that and see if people click on it. And if they do, so maybe you have 3-4 different designs that you're thinking of, just put them out there and see what gets clicks. And those are probably the ones that are attractive. So focus on that, or buy AdWords for keywords that are relevant to what you're trying to do, and see what are people interested in, and try to narrow down on what you're doing like that. Having done that, you should definitely sort of get something out there, some kind of prototype that people can interact with and see where it's going. And as you were saying, you can do this with a very small budget these days. So there's really no excuse.
Let's invite the audience for questions. Let's see some hands. More hands. More questions. Where's the exterior people? Let's start with one over here. Send the mics. Yeah, since my colleagues can't move till the middle, so pass the mic forward, please. Okay, go.
Okay, so you know about Lean Startup, the book with Eric Ries.
Yeah.
What do you think of his ideas?
I think they're great.
Basically.
No, but I think they're great, and they touch a lot on the points that we've been making today as well. That you can get very far with very little means. You can bootstrap a lot, and if you do want to raise funds, eventually, if you could put yourself in the position where you don't really need an investment, that's when you're going to be able to attract the most interest, and then you can raise money in order to scale quicker or go global, or something like that.
All right. Question over here, mic number 12.
All right, so you were talking earlier about building a basis of customers even before you have an investor. So my question is, how do you market your product before you have the investments to do so?
Well, I think there's several ways to do that. I mean, if you have a mobile, service, you just put up on the App Store, and you can promote things, on the social graph, and there's a lot of ways today to market services without having a massive marketing budget. And it's maybe not also just getting as many customers as possible. You need to just have a sample of customers, and then you can analyze their behavior, because with marketing you can always get a lot of people into the front door, but if they're just leaving again, then you know that your product is not that great. But you need to analyze very early on what people are doing with your service, and specifically if they come back, if they continue to use your service, then you're onto something. If they go and check it out because you had some splashy AdWords or something, and then they're leaving the next day, then you need to rethink it.
Let's get a question from up here. Christian, yeah, this guy here. Yeah, mic number 11.
Hello. There are a lot of types of situations, but referring to building the startup and putting together your team, and how do you approach your co-founders, partners, suppliers, or a company that you want to pitch an idea to and still protect your idea? Is it only by writing, or how do you manage to keep both open and approaching new stuff and still keeping stuff to yourself? And protecting the percentage or anything like that, but just keep it safe.
To protect your idea. I think that it's if you're too protective, you won't get far. You need to sell your idea to others, but also the more people you speak to about your idea, you're going to get a lot of feedback. And it's very, very rare that it's the idea that someone takes someone's idea and builds a company out of it. That is very much about the execution. So I think that people should not be too concerned about sharing their ideas with other people that you try to hire, or people that you try to sell your service to, and people you're trying to get money from. Because if you're protective, no one's going to come and join you.
Let's get a question from Twitter here. Question regarding Zennström Philanthropies. Tell us fast about Zennström Philanthropies and what are you doing right now?
Sure. So that's Zennström Philanthropies is a foundation that I set up with my wife in 2007, and we did that for a few reasons. That we had been involved with helping a few non-profit organizations, and there was primarily people who run non-profits that we came across and we got to know. We thought they were doing great stuff, but we decided to be more strategic about what we were doing, rather than helping a few different organizations that were doing completely different things. We said let's focus on some specific issues that we care about, that are close to our hearts. And the two programs that we did was human rights, and the other one is the environment, and specific around climate change, and then also later on about the protection of the Baltic Sea. So what we're doing is that we are working actually very, very similarly to a venture capital firm. We are seeking out non-profit organizations that are working in these different areas and towards some of the strategic objectives that we want to achieve, and we interview them, you do due diligence, and very much as we would like, we look at doing a commercial investment, we look at the people, the team around it, and we may give them some, a grant, and then we follow up later on.
Make sure that they use the money in the right way.
Yeah.
Okay, another question. Let's get one from over here. Okay, we have one here. David, please. And also, let's prepare a question up there directly after this one. Go. Thank you. No, Christian, up there. Thank you. Sorry, I have to run a bit. Okay.
Should I start?
Yes, and it's mic number 9, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to hear your personal vision. What mark do you want to leave on the world?
So repeat that question again.
Your personal vision
mic
for the
closer.
world. Your personal vision. What mark do you want to leave on the world when you're done? Atomico and Wrapp.
Tough question, but I think it's also a very good question in a way that I think which is pretty important, because a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and I think maybe more so in the technology than entrepreneurs in the financial sector, they're passionate and trying to build their businesses, not only to, because they want to create a successful business to, make a big exit and make a lot of money, but they actually do it because they want to make a mark on the world. And they want to drive a process, a change process, and really, have an impact. That's for sure, for me was always one of the reasons why I worked hard to be an entrepreneur and to be successful was, for sure, yes, I wanted to make money, because at the end of the day, that's going to be the scorecard that you can, compete with others. That's your competitive drive, but you also want to make an impact. And, for sure, for me, just the fact when I travel around the world, and a lot of people all around who are using Skype to communicate, that's something that, it's really, really rewarding personally for me to see that. And I think that's the other thing that I also think is very important personally to me is one of the reasons why I think it's really great to be here tonight is that I think it's really important to promote entrepreneurship and to encourage people to, and specifically a bit more so students, to consider entrepreneurialism and maybe not to go and work for a big bank or a big consulting company or a big engineering company, but think about joining a startup and becoming an entrepreneur. I think that's something that's important.
Mic number 11, up there.
Hello. Antonio from Linkify at KTH Student Inc. I've read that there is a copycat of Wrapp already called Job Gifts from this German student incubator. My question is, what should be the attitude towards this unfair competition?
I guess it's a question for me. Yeah, it's from a German company, investment company called Rocket Internet that has specialized.
You shouldn't say their names.
They have specialized in cloning successful internet companies. They typically clone Silicon Valley-based companies. What's interesting with this, apart from us being in the middle of it all, is that this is a very early stage for them to clone a company. So that's a little bit worrying, I guess, for the whole ecosystem. For us, it just means that we need to redouble our efforts and work harder and execute better.
How do you actually, is that the only way to protect your ideas and your visions?
It's not the only way. I think it's the only way that's effective long term. I mean, you can, if the cloning is too blatant, you can probably claim copyright or trademark infringement, that sort of thing. You can look at ways of patenting your innovation. All of these things take a lot of time and distract you from maybe what you should be focusing on. But I'm sure there's sort of a mix that you can apply to fighting them off. But I think what you need to focus on is just being better than them.
I think it's when these kind of things happen, or when you can also be that, like, say you're working on your startup and then you read that Google or Facebook going to launch the same similar initiative. Ultimately, this is someone going to come and compete with you. It's always great when you don't have any competition and you're the only one doing what you're doing. But the reality is that if no one else is doing what you're doing, then you probably is not that interesting of a company. So when you start to get competition, that means, okay, we're probably onto something. But it's also really, really interesting what these kind of things makes to an organization. That's also, that also shows the true color of an organization, because are you a fighter or not? And that's I think the sign of a good organization is, okay, take them on and compete.
Quick question, Mike 11, please keep it short.
Hello, Niklas. I have two brief questions for you. One specifically on Skype, and one in general for any startup.
Choose one of them, please.
They are real brief. Everybody knows that Skype has been sold to Microsoft. So, what's the main reason why you sold that? We all knew that you were making no profit before. You sold the company. So, what was the reason?
So, why did you sell Skype to Microsoft?
Yeah, it was quite simple, because we bought the company back together with a consortium of investors, and our objective was to do an IPO, so an IPO track. And many times when a company is about to do an IPO, that's also when it's very convenient for other companies who may be interested to acquire the company comes out and actually make an offer for it. So as an investor, you need to just look at your net present value.
Last question from the audience. Over there, yeah, still same mic.
Yes.
Keep it brief, please.
Question to Niklas. What happened to JOOST and what did you learn from it?
So, as we talked about before, there's being an entrepreneur and also being an investor in an entrepreneurial company is a trial and error. And sometimes things look very good at the paper, that the timing is right to do something. And at this time, when in early 2006, we thought the timing was right to provide a service that could bring television online, where we don't need to sit and watch TV and based on a program guide, but we can watch television whenever we want and wherever we want. In this case, it was interesting because the incumbents were very, very quick to develop their own services. Anything from SVT, SVT Play, TV4 Play, but also in the US, maybe more importantly, things like Hulu and others developed really, really quickly. And because I think that the video industry, the video creation industry did not want to create, tech companies who control the distribution. They wanted to own it themselves. So that's why that company, did not work out.
Let's continue about companies not working out. Got a question here from Twitter. What was your absolute biggest business failures, and what did you learn from it? Let's start with Andreas. I can see in your eyes, it's like, what failure should I choose? Or is it hard?
I mean, I guess I've been lucky so far. I haven't been around in a company that has failed. Now that's I don't know. I guess I'll experience that eventually, for sure, in some form or other. I mean, everyone does.
So let's change the question to why have you 100% hit rate so far on your
But it's a
ventures?
huge exaggeration to say that I have 100% hit rate. I've been lucky to join companies that have been successful so far, and so. Yeah.
I think what's interesting is I think that failure is something that's actually very good because, and we always like, what was your biggest business failure? And like that's a tough question because what is really the biggest one? Because I think we make mistakes all the time, and I think that if you make mistakes, let's make sure you make that mistake as quickly as possible. And sometimes one thing is really, really hard if you start a company and you almost break even, and we get a few more customers and almost there. And you have these companies who've been around forever, but they're not, the growth curve is like horizontal. They're flatlining, and then you sit around. And those are the hardest companies because, sometimes it's better that, you crash down and then at least you crashed and then you can start off again. So, so I think, so that in that case, failure is actually pretty, you should fail quickly and learn from it.
It's a great property for a business idea that it's fail fast in the sense that you will know quickly whether it works or not, that it doesn't take years to evaluate it.
So let's round up because you guys are busy men and you have to move on. Look at the ecosystem of Sweden and Europe in terms of entrepreneurship. We have 15 organizations here working all the time with entrepreneurship and innovation. What do you have to say to them? What can we do better here in Sweden to improve our climate?
I think, well, if we wait to the spring, it's going to be better climate. But I think it's, first of all, I think we're doing really well. And, since when I went, I graduated a long time ago. And when I went to university, entrepreneurs, they were the ones who were building the roads outside, and you went to work for ABB or something like that, and we did not have this entrepreneurial organization. So all these things are really, really important to continue to have more entrepreneurial organizations. The fact that people are coming here to listen to us tonight rather than being home and studying or doing something else more interesting. I think it's an ecosystem that we are building, and it's something that you're not going to build overnight. It requires that there are, great companies, in an environment like in Stockholm. You have a lot of very, very good technology companies. Obviously, Wrapp, Spotify, Klarna, Mojang. You have a bunch of great companies.
We'll get some coming from Student Incubator as well.
Yeah. So they're all good companies that you can go work for. But it's also important that, maybe people like, who have been around, like Hjalmar, myself, and others who, we've been, somehow successful entrepreneurs, and we go out and invest in next generation of entrepreneurs. And people like, Andreas, who started off, he joined an entrepreneurial company. You just even, dropped out. You don't have to drop out, but that's fine. You're going to have to go back later on and finish off your studies. But those people say, that's a good example. So you join a company and you learn a lot, and then you go out and become a co-founder next time. And that's part of the ecosystem. All of those things are part of the ecosystem. Okay. And this event that that what you guys are doing is part of the ecosystem. But it's just getting better and better, and you cannot have any shortcuts for it.
Okay. So keep improving.
Yeah, just continue. I think we don't need to do any U-turns. I think we just continue to be, and I think also, maybe most important, like if you're like in a lot of people here, I'm sure in this room, it's like, okay, well, where should I go and work? Should I start a company? Should I go and try to work for McKinsey or for Goldman Sachs or something? Well, why not try out one of those, risky startup companies? Because it's not really a risk for you to join. You can learn a lot, and you can work close to some, exciting entrepreneurs, and that could be a very, very good, learning curve.
Perfect. Thank you guys very much. I know you're busy. Thank you for being here. You're a big inspiration for Sweden and for us. Thank you. Some flowers for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. So, before we finish off, and I would like to inform you that we have a super nice mingle coming up, and you go, if you want to join the mingle, you go to the upper level. So, and those of you going home, use the main exits. There are going to be a lot of cool companies and organizations. So use this moment to meet super interesting organizations from your school, and enjoy the evening. Thank you for tonight.